Will, I think you often talk about, when talking about novelists who've influenced you, Waugh and Kingsley Amis. Would you say they're the novelists who've influenced you most?
Yes, I think they possibly are. I'd throw in Graham Greene and John Updike, and funnily enough, two Russian writers who have had a profound influence on me, Vladimir Nabokov and Chekhov, the short story Chekhov, not the playwright Chekhov. I can't quite see the clear link, but I think it's a mindset that I respond to. They see the world, I think, in a way that I do, and that's why I like them. But though I don't try to write like them, but they're certainly writers I reread, and I think the writers you reread are the ones that are closest to you and thereby have an influence on you.
Yeah. A lot of your leading characters, I think it's fair to say, are outsiders. They don't quite fit. Do you think this has anything to do with your childhood? Because when you and I first knew each other, which was at Gordonston at school, you were being brought up in Africa, but you were at school in Scotland. Do you think that your past affects where you're writing in that way?
I think it does, and I think I do feel still to a certain extent deracinated, and I think it's all to do with my curious upbringing. My parents were Scottish, but I was born in West Africa and grew up in West Africa, and it was my home.
In Nigeria?
In Nigeria and in Ghana first of all. So I felt at home in Africa, and I didn't feel particularly at home in Scotland or England. It was a place where my relatives lived. And then I went to boarding school, as all kids in colonial parts did. And that's, as you know, John, a strange environment as well. And it's not the real world, a single-sex boarding school.
Absolutely not.
And so I always felt sort of not African and not British. And I sort of jokingly describe myself as Afro-Scot. But I think it's made me always feel I'm sort of on the outside looking in. And maybe that's a very good place to be for a novelist. You know, I'm always slightly detached from the country I live in. I've lived in London for 30 years now. I feel very at home here, but you know, I'm not a Londoner. And when I go back to Scotland, sometimes people think I'm not Scottish, or if I'm included in some anthologies of Scottish literature and pointedly excluded from others. So all this adds to, not to my paranoia, but my feeling of being somehow not part of the club or of the team. And you know, I have no problem with that.
And that's affected the way that some of the characters that you create.
Yes, I think it does. I think what I do to my characters is I take them out of an environment that they're familiar with, and I plonk them down in something somewhere strange or somewhere difficult, and test them. So I recognise that this is something I do. You know, I don't write quiet, peaceful novels about a country doctor or something like that. They're always quite rambunctious, and things happen. And my characters are often in, you know, pretty severe circumstances, and I give them a hard time.
How well do you know your characters before you start writing?
Well, I know them extremely well. I mean, I take 2 years figuring out and preparing a novel and about a year to write it. So when I sit down to write, I have done a massive amount of research and background reflection. I have a kind of mini dossier on each character. I know how tall they are, what colour their eyes are, what they like for breakfast, who they're married to, etc., etc. I know them extremely well, and I create them, you know, and they're my creatures, and I don't.
So you're living with them for a bit.
I live with them. I mean, I can imagine almost any character I've written walking through the door of this room. I can visualise them absolutely clearly. But I don't believe in this romantic idea that your characters take you over. This idea that somehow you're led by your inventions. This is where I quote Vladimir Nabokov, who was asked the same question, and he said, "No, all my characters are galley slaves, and I'm the man on the deck with a whip." And I'm sort of like that as well. I think I control their world, I control them, I know their fates. And
so you know the end of your novels before you write the beginning?
Absolutely. And it's a tip I'd give to any young writer. Figure out the end of your novel before you start it, because you then have a destination. And it's true that a good ending can redeem a mediocre novel, but a mediocre ending can sink a good novel. So It's something I really believe in, and people say I'm thinking of writing a novel. My next question is, how does it end? And so I know exactly. I've often written the last paragraph of my novel before I've started on page one. So it's just, my modus operandi. It works for me, it doesn't work for everybody, but it just means I've never had writer's block, and I write not particularly fast, but I write with confidence because I know my destination.
And that your characters are not going to take you off in some unexpected direction. On your general view of the world that emerges from your novels, I suppose me as a reader, I'd say luck plays a large part in life. Would you say that that's true?
I think so. I think it's definitely the one of the key themes in all my novels. I'm faithless. I don't believe in a supernatural being. I sort of envy people who do, but I don't. Therefore, in this secular world, which lasts however long we have available to us, what are the forces that govern us? And I think it's good luck and bad luck. It's the roll of the dice. And I have said in one of my novels, any life can be analysed in terms of the good luck and the bad luck that person has had. So it's very much there as a kind of dominant idea lurking behind the various stories I'm telling.
So one should ride one's luck while one can, as your characters do.
Yes, and I think also you never know when bad luck's going to hit. Your present happiness, whatever it might be, is an incredibly fragile thing, and so I, seize the day, I think, is the motto I would urge people to employ, and enjoy the present moment while you can.
You talked about the ending and thinking about the ending before you begin. Is there any other tip you might pass on to an aspiring novelist?
There are lots of little tricks of the trade you learn, but I think one of the things that people forget about novel writing, and one of the things you need, is stamina. It takes a very long time, and I think a lot of novels are abandoned because people run out of steam. So I always say to young writers, if you haven't got that doggedness in you, that ability to write and write and write, even when it's not going well, a week goes by, months go by, maybe years go by, and you're still writing, then it's not the job for you. And the other thing I think I would say is a very general thing, is you have to be an avid reader. It's another question I say to young writers, do you read a lot? And they go, well, not so much. Well, don't be a novelist. It's like wanting to be a painter and saying, do I have to go to art galleries? Yes, you do. And so you have to be in.
And that's what feeds your knowledge. I think Kingsley Amis said something like, to write a good novel, you have to know a lot and have thought about things.
I think so. I mean, you can write a simple novel, of course, about very simple things, but I think that it's to do with what the novel is. The novel, as D.H. Lawrence described it, is the bright book of life. It does the human condition better than any other art form. You want to know about people, or about societies or cultures. Actually, the thing to do is read a novel, not read a work of history or a work of academic commentary. Novels are the best route to understanding the curious people we are and this curious adventure we're all embarked on.
Very difficult question, but do you have a favourite novel?
I do have a favourite. It's chops and changes, but one novel I keep coming back to again. It's a unique novel, and it is by Vladimir Nabokov. It's called Pale Fire, and I think it's my favourite novel. It's very funny, but it's also, as I say, it's unique. It's a 999 line poem in rhyming couplets, and then 250 pages of footnotes. Now, it sounds daunting, but actually it's an extraordinary piece of work, and I've read it 7 or 8 times. I also reread the other Russian favourite is Chekhov's short stories. They are extraordinary masterpieces, certainly the ones he wrote in the last 10 years of his life. So those two Russians are kind of vying with each other at the top of the hit parade.